Hey guys, EDA here, and we're going to be doing a ranking of our top five Arsenal players of the 23-24 season. Obviously, Arsenal currently sit third in the Premier League behind Liverpool and Man City, and are in the round of 16 against Porto, awaiting the second leg, and are currently 1-0 down after the match in Portugal. So I think after the 6-0 win against Sheffield United, it was probably a good time to review some individual performances, look kind of at the landscape of the season, and see who's been consistent. And obviously, rankings are subjective, so I'd love to hear what you guys think and your opinions of who's been the best and who you've been impressed by during this season. So, obviously, everyone has their opinion. I'm going to be taking a slightly analytical approach, obviously, looking at some of the websites who scored and FootMob. But obviously, their rankings and what they state is subjective. I don't necessarily agree, and my ranking won't line up with theirs, but there's some similarities. I will say that. So from a who scored perspective, they have Gabriel Magalhaes, Gabriel Martinelli, Martin Odegaard, Declan Rice, and Bukayo Saka to make their top five. And with FootMob, they have Gabriel Martinelli, Zinchenko, Odegaard, Rice, and Saka as their top five. And now I think the more egregious one is the FootMob, because I think Zinchenko being there is a bit wild, if I'm being honest. But again, my top five is based on what I know, what I see, watching kind of every game of the season. And so we're going to kick off our top five with the Arsenal captain, Martin Odegaard. He is, again, a brilliant, brilliant player. I think looking at this season, we have to be fair with him, if I'm being honest with you. Last season, he scored 15 goals in the Premier League alone, and I think that was without penalties. That was the highest from a Premier League midfielder, and again, so impressive for the young captain to be shining very very early in his Arsenal career. He's again, I think in comparison to last season, he's probably taken a step back, and it was kind of slower for him to get to the pace he's in now. He's had different iterations of kind of his position. Obviously, losing Xhaka hasn't kind of helped, and the structure of losing Thomas Partey as well. Those patterns of play which he's used to have obviously changed. But again, he at this present time of the season, he's on 6 goals, I believe 6 assists as well. And not only that, in terms of his performances in terms of like direct output, I think you also need to take into consideration who he is as in an Arsenal player, and who he represents within this team. First and foremost, he's the leader of our press. He is the most active player. He works the hardest in terms of pressing out of any player in the Arsenal team, without a doubt. Any Arsenal fan will tell you Martin Odegaard, if he does nothing else, will press and work and work and work until it's the 90th minute and the game's over, or he's been taken off. And more times than not, he'll work to the very end of the game. So props to the captain. He's done well. The reason he ranks, I guess, not as high as some people may think, is again, I have high expectations for him. He's the Arsenal captain. I think at certain times this season he's just had poor performances, bad games, no kind of lack of effort or not being interested in the game. It's just for one of those things essentially. But he's ramped it up in the recent weeks, in the recent months since the turn of the year, and you've really got to give him his props, to be honest with you. Young captain, but a shining example of what it means to lead on the pitch, and it gives a little bit of a Cesc Fabregas vibe. If I had one critique and one criticism, I would say he's superb, but I don't know if he's in the ilk of a Ozil or a Fabregas. He creates in different ways. And like a KD, he's not a KDB, for example. He creates in different ways, but the way he creates is special in its own right. Number 4, and again, I think we might have some controversy here. We have our French stallion of a centre back, William Saliba. What can you say about Willow? Amazing player. I watched him when he was on loan. The loan he had at Nice wasn't the best, but the loan he had with Marseille, I watched a lot of games, just keeping track of our players and how they're performing. And even at Marseille, he was. I'm sorry to say he was one of the best centre backs in Europe. Like, it sounds crazy to say a young centre back. What was he then? 2021, 22 maybe. I think he must have been like 2021. Shining, made the team of the season. Was a big reason why Marseille had a good season that year, or good in comparison to what they're experiencing now. And when he came into the Arsenal team, I knew he was good. Like, I'd seen him. I didn't know he was world class, and I found out within the first 45 minutes against Crystal Palace that this is a world class centre back. I didn't need to see much else, and he's proven that day in, day out. I think looking back at last season, he was amazing. But we missed him at the end of the season. That back injury was a big blow for our title challenge and for what we needed to achieve, essentially. So yeah, very hard to lose a player like that during the season. But again, Willow, amazing. The reason he ranks lower right now, I would say, is I think just bigger impacts by other players. I think if this was last season, he would probably rank higher. But I think we're a better team than last season, and that's reflected in certain players stepping up and other players coming in. And that's a good segue into our third player in the list, which is Declan Rice. Deckers, absolutely love Declan Rice. What a player, what a man. So that sounds funny to say in terms of, like, you know, he's still young, but he's got so much experience in the game. I remember watching him when he was like 18, 19 coming up through West Ham, and I'm an East London boy, and hearing people around the team and the club talk about Declan Rice and coming up and how he was like years above his like age group in terms of not only ability but mentality. And it's clear to see he's coming to Arsenal and he's exactly what we need. It's rare that you say for an £105 million player that's a snippet. And I would pay more for him because he's shown his quality. It's not only technically, and we're going to get to his technical ability, trust me. Mentally, he's on another level. He is on another level. He reads play better than 99% of players I've seen. His ability to see things before they happen is just second to none. And the biggest compliment I can give him is we haven't missed Thomas Partey. Of course, we've wanted the addition of Thomas Partey, but we haven't missed him. Declan Rice has performed time and time again, and it's been great to see. And I love having Declan Rice in the team this season. He's been a star. I think one of the things that people maybe were doubting when he was coming in, has he got the technical ability? Is he going to perform? Is he going to have the output? I think Roy Keane mentioned, you know, and rightly so, I agree. What's the next evolution to your game? What are you going to be bringing to make you justify that fee? Because you have to be an all-action midfielder. You have to contribute to every facet of the game if we're calling you world-class, if we're calling you a standout player. Obviously, he's not just a six. He can play 6, he can play 8. He can do all things. Like, he's that good of a player. He's just a pure quality football player. And yeah, we're lucky to have him, essentially. But there were doubts about his technical ability, and I can tell you those doubts and those claims are unfounded. He's technically so good. His passing range is good, and I think it's going to increase. He's playing with no shade to West Ham at all. He's playing with better and more intelligent players. I think he would have grown this year playing with someone like Kudus coming into the team, playing with someone like with someone like Ward-Prowse potentially as well. He's a sponge from all that you can kind of see on the pitch, and again, he's had an amazing season. He's proved his doubters wrong. He's had an amazing performance, standout games. I remember I was at the Man United game, where he was electric and scored the second goal and the winner. And I remember I was at the side where he scored. Absolute scenes. So yeah, Decker's been amazing. Output this season: 5 goals, 5 assists. His delivery from corners, his ability to take a shot on, and trust his technical ability. The goal against Chelsea is no fluke. The goal against West Ham is no fluke. The goal against Sheffield United is no fluke. He finds himself in a different position, and he's popping up in those roles because he has that flexibility. If Jorginho comes into the team again, he can play a 6 or an 8. And it's an amazing ability to have within the team. So big shout out to Deckers. At number 3. Number two, and one of my favourite players at Arsenal, period. And I'm happy he's getting the praise because I've loved him ever since he came into into the team. And he was one of Mikel Arteta's first signings, and I think he's been one of the most pivotal ones, to be honest with you. His name is Gabriel Magalhaes. Big Gab, as I call him. What can you say? What can you say about Gabriel Magalhaes? I think if you don't watch him and you're not aware of kind of how Arsenal are playing and his role in what we do, then you'll probably say, oh, like Saliba, rightfully, I guess, in certain times takes all the plaudits. But this season, we've seen the maturation of Gabriel Magalhaes. I think when we came into the new season, it was kind of interesting because he wasn't starting. Mikel had gone with a back four of, to start the season, Timber. He had Saliba, White, and Thomas Partey, I believe, to make up the back four. And I think it's come out now that there was some disruption in Gabriel Magalhaes' start of the season. He potentially may have wanted to leave. Mikel may have had to convince him to stay. I mean, offers kind of from across Europe and Saudi, I believe, was a big one. But again, an amazing player. I think so underrated and one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. And I'll stand on that because he's a player I've seen over the last couple of years develop and mature and grow. When he came into the team, again, for me, just watching the game and watching him, the quality was undeniable. We had a quality left-sided centre-back. What was less, or I would say what was more concerning, was his temperament. He had a temperament which reminded me of Koscielny when Koscielny was at Arsenal. Koscielny was a really, really good centre-back. I really loved him at his time, but he was erratic. And Gabriel had that element to his game. He was very erratic. You couldn't determine what you would get on a given day. Would you get the great Gabriel Magalhaes, who would be very technical and very precise with his play and very aggressive with centre-backs who he normally is? Or would you get a flustered Gabriel Magalhaes, make a rash tackle, get sent off? We've seen it before. The Man City game a couple of years ago, I was there again. Needless challenge, not necessary. And so you get into those stages, you get into those habits, and you start to think that's who this player is. Like, he's not going to mature, he's not going to grow. I think Gabriel Magalhaes is a perfect example of a player who's grown, a player who's developed, and a player who's identified his weaknesses, I would say, and worked on those and grown from those. And so for me, he's always been solid, but those errors were holding him back. Now he's been a brick wall. He's not in Saliba's shadow anymore. He's outshining him at times, and I think fans are seeing that. Also, he's a threat from set pieces. 4 goals this season, should have more. Had a couple like goals taken away from him, own goals, deflections, etc. But the reason he's not my number one, and I can say this kind of hand on heart, is because he didn't start the season. And for whatever reason, I value consistency, I value availability, and that leads me on to number one. And I think in terms of the Premier League, he's probably only missed 1 game, but I think there's something that me, FootMob, and Who Scored all agree on, and that is the number 1 ranked player so far in Arsenal's 23-24 season is Bukayo Saka, the star boy of Arsenal. Again, what can you say about Bukayo Saka? What can you say? He's for me, and there was a debate, and I'm not going to go into it right now. We'll have a separate video to discuss it. Is he world class? Yes. Yes, he's world class. How you define world class is up to you. I define world class as top 5 in your position. Are you top 5, top 3 in your position? Yeah, like if you're top 5 in your position, if you're top 5 in any job in the world, you're world class. And I think he's top 5 right winger in the world, without a doubt, top 3 even. Again, he's had moments in this season where he hasn't been the Bukayo Saka of last season. I don't think Arsenal are the Arsenal of last season. We've grown, we've matured, we've developed. Mikel has identified weaknesses within his systems and within certain players and certain profiles, and he's tried to address it. And Bukayo Saka has addressed the element within him that is, okay, sometimes I may perform, but I'm not getting that direct input on the game. Now he's getting a direct input on the game. Time after time after time, he's delivering. The numbers speak for themselves. 13 goals, 8 assists in the league, killing the game. He's sitting in company of the elite in the Premier League. He's sitting in the company of Salah. He's making history by himself. And again, doing an amazing job. He's been double teamed, triple teamed, had the whole right side locked down, and he's still found a way to deliver. He's still found a way to have an impact on the game. And his maturation is crazy. I mean, the fact he's hit some of the numbers he's hit already is mind blowing. But he's created a legacy for himself, and yeah, there's not many people that are touching Saka at this present time, which I'm happy to say and I'm pleased to say. So yeah, guys, this has been my top 5 Arsenal players of the 23-24 season. Let me know your thoughts and opinions, who I may have missed out, who you would have said is a lock for the top 5. And I guess we'll revisit this at the end of the season if we'll see who maybe climbs up the ranks and who maybe drops down. But guys, thank you for watching. It's been EDA Talk Sports here, and I'll see you guys soon.